When country music loses one of its true outlaws, the whole family feels it. And the family of David Allan Coe runs deep, deeper than most people know. David Allan Coe died on April 29, 2026, at the age of 86, in an intensive care unit. No official memorial service has been announced yet. His wife Kimberly and the family are still in the earliest hours of grief, making arrangements, absorbing the silence, navigating a loss that came after years of declining health and still somehow landed like a surprise. But the tributes are already painting the picture of what that service will feel like when it comes. And three names in particular, Alan Jackson, Hank Williams Jr., and Rodney Crowell, carry connections to David Allan Coe that go so far back and run so deep that when they speak, the entire history of outlaw country speaks with them. Let's start with Hank Williams Jr., because his connection to David Allan Coe is not just professional, it is spiritual. It is woven into one of the most iconic songs David Allan Coe ever recorded. In 1983, Coe recorded The Ride, a haunting ballad about a hitchhiker encountering the ghost of Hank Williams Sr. on a road from Montgomery to Nashville. The ghost questions the narrator about whether he has the musical talent and dedication to become a star. Coe added an outro verse in which Hank praises the new class of country singers, from Waylon Jennings and Billy Joe Shaver to David Allan Coe himself. He wrote himself into the Hank Williams mythology, by name, in a song that Hank Williams Jr., who has spent his entire life carrying the weight and the blessing of that same mythology, would have felt in the deepest possible way. A person who worked for Hank Jr. for 20 years said they were around David Allan Coe touring some with Hank and that he was a good guy with great music. They added that with Coe's passing, there are now only two outlaws left, Hank Jr. and Willie Nelson. Two outlaws left. That sentence carries everything. The generation is almost gone, and the man who wrote himself riding alongside Hank's ghost has now gone to find out if that ghost was real. Now Alan Jackson, and here is where the emotional weight of this loss becomes impossible to separate from the music itself. Alan Jackson wrote and recorded Midnight in Montgomery, a song about visiting Hank Williams' grave, a haunting, reverent piece about what it means to stand at the resting place of the man who invented the emotional vocabulary of country music. There may not be a more haunting song in the history of country music than The Ride, recorded by David Allan Coe about encountering Hank's ghost. And when Jackson later recorded Midnight in Montgomery about visiting Hank's grave, some listeners immediately felt its connection to The Ride. Two songs, 20 years apart, both reaching toward the same ghost, both written by men who understood that Hank Williams is not just a historical figure in country music, he is the conscience of it, the measuring stick, the voice every other voice is still being compared to. David Allan Coe understood that. He recorded it in 1983. Alan Jackson understood it. He wrote about it in the early 90s. And now, with Coe gone, the man who wrote The Ride has joined the conversation permanently, not as a hitchhiker anymore, but as the destination. And then there is Rodney Crowell, who was in the room at the very beginning. Coe was featured in the 1975 documentary Heartworn Highways. Other performers featured in the film included Guy Clark, Townes Van Zandt, Rodney Crowell, Steve Young, Steve Earle, and the Charlie Daniels Band. Rodney Crowell sat around a table with David Allan Coe in 1975. A young, hungry songwriter watching one of the most unconventional figures in Nashville doing exactly what Nashville told him he couldn't do, being exactly who Nashville told him not to be. His representative confirmed that even through the difficult years of declining health, Coe appreciated all of his fans. He appreciated the fans, right up until the very end. That warmth traveled in both directions, from the stage to the crowd, from the crowd back to the man. When the memorial comes, and it will, Alan Jackson, Hank Williams Jr., And Rodney Crowell will be in that room in some form, in person or in spirit, because some debts in country music cannot be paid any other way than by showing up. David Allan Coe was the first to record Tennessee Whiskey before George Jones and Chris Stapleton made it famous. He wrote Take This Job and Shove It for Johnny Paycheck, and Would You Lay With Me for Tanya Tucker. He gave his best songs away. He gave his stories away. He gave his ghost to a hitchhiker on a highway, and now the highway is quiet. Rest in peace, David Allan Coe. September 6, 1939, April 29, 2026. The long, hard ride is over. Thank you for watching.